progress.
Yeah, but Ira, Del Chaplin, that was his, for years and years, for the 2 years.
So that's what it's about. Well, you know his mother. You know his mother, Abba. Yeah, she lived in Florence, Abba. You didn't know her?
Anyway.
Right, how you gonna manage, yeah.
Yes, it's a cousin or something.
Right.
Oh. I was thinking of going, but then I said, I don't know.
How early?
I don't know.
Exactly, at that point. Do it fast, because I gotta go.
You said it was good. You said he's a good speaker. So, yeah, he was here before. Yeah.
He wasn't eating very much quiet. Sorry, I have to get out. What else? Whatever.
I go to with the. I know there are Kabbalists that they believe in the Zohar and the different signs of this and that. You know what? And I have 12:15 lunch. So that's. Oh, okay. No, I'm not.
Does the temperature in the room feel right to most of you?
It's fine, don't make it colder, please.
It's fine.
How did you know it was on my mind?
Yeah, no, because sometimes it gets colder.
Everybody's more.
394.
It could be yours. Or it could be yours naturally. No. Not mine.
I bought tickets for myself. Spent $70.
Okay, let me just.
From now until-
For those that-
I think so.
Oh, it's a dinner.
Okay, Boker Tov, everybody.
I like to do the movements because I don't do it. Body needs it, of course. Your body needs it.
Our goal for today
Okay.
is to read very carefully some selected sukkim from our parsha and to discover what their real message is. So if you would open up to the beginning of the parsha, which is Perek Yud Chet in Sefer Shemot, so page 334.
394.
I'm sorry, thank you, 394. Thank you. And let me just read that first parsha to you, and you could think about questions you might have on the pasuk. Vayishma Yitro Kohen Midyan Choten Moshe. So Yitro, who was the priest of Midyan, the father-in-law of Moshe, heard Eit Kol Asher Asa Elokim Moshe, that everything, all the things that God did for Moshe, Ul Yisrael Amo, and to Israel, his nation, Ki Hotzi Hashem et Yisrael miMitzrayim, that Hashem took Israel out of Egypt. That is the opening pasuk. I have 3 questions on the pasuk. Question number 1. How is Kohen Midjan relevant to this pasuk and this parsha? Because Yisro is identified in 3 different ways. In the first, let's say 3, in the first 6 words, Yisro has 3 different identifications. Number 1 is his name Yisro. Number 2 is that he was a high priest in Midian.
Just says
Now-
Kohen, it doesn't say high priest.
Well, a priest,
Just
okay.
explanation.
But when we say priest, we're not talking about the Kohen who duchens on Yantiv.
I
You
know.
know,
Not Jewish.
he was a priest to Avodah Zarah,
Okay.
to idol worships,
Okay.
Okay.
okay? And he was a father-in-law of Moshe. So three different explanations. So that's question number 1, is especially in the parsha that is going to have revelation of Hashem at Har Sinai. Why do we have to open it up with a specific reference to being a priest of Avodah Zarah, of idol worship?
They identify himself.
Yes, but to read the parsha and his name, well, you have the Ma'amad Har Sinai in this parsha. That's really.
Okay, good question. Well, I'll try to answer that. Together, we'll try to answer that. So, second question: when the Torah testifies to us that Yisro heard a kol asher asa Elokim leMoshe uli Yisrael amo, everything that Hashem did to Moses and Israel, his nation, and then says Ki hotzi Hashem et Yisrael miMitzrayim, that Hashem took Israel, the Israelites out of Mitzrayim. Isn't that included in the phrase that Yisrael heard everything that Hashem did?
Plus, it well, first before that, all the Nisim, and that Hashem had said Israel in Mitzrayim.
Or you want to add a phrase? So you're saying something's missing?
No, I'm saying he heard everything, which means all the Esau code and so forth. And after that Hashem had said.
But if he heard about the Makot,
That should have been
which
included.
goes, so the Makot led to the Exodus, and if he heard about the split, and the Medrash says he heard about the splitting of the sea. So the splitting of the sea is already out of Mitzrayim.
That's not
But
not
whatever it is, I'm just saying, if you want to start, elaborating, but the Torah, the pasuk says he heard everything. It doesn't say he heard what Hashem did. That could have said by Yishma Yitro, etc. Et asher asa Elokim leMoshe v'Yisrael amo. It could have said that Yisro heard what Hashem did to for Moshe and the Jewish people. But it says everything. It adds the word everything.
Okay.
So if it's adding the word everything,
That includes that.
then we have to ask, why do we have to add another verse? Right, it should include that Hashem took Bnei Israel out of Mitzrayim,
Well,
out of Egypt.
To
Okay.
emphasize
So
it.
that's those are 2 of my questions. And what's that? Why not?
He's telling the Torah is describing him. Why is he motivated to leave? To go
Interestingly, I guess Rashi would look at it the other way around, because Rashi on the word Vayishma. So Rashi's question is Mashmu. It's not a technical question per se. It's an informational question. Mashmu Shama Uva. Because Yisro heard he wasn't in Mitzrayim.
Okay,
So he heard the news somehow. But
Yisro's
Rashi,
in India.
or wherever it is, but Rashi wants to know what is it exactly that he heard.
They're telling you everything that happened.
No, but Rashi, it's interesting. Rashi even say it. Rashi narrows it down. He's borrowing it from the Medrash Mechilta. He says that Yisro heard Kriyas Yamsuf, the splitting of the sea, Milchemet Amalek, and the victory in the battle against Amalek.
About the Makos.
Doesn't here, it's not, doesn't
That's
say
why
the
it says
Malchus.
everything.
It doesn't,
But he says everything, so everything is everything.
right,
To me, it's-
okay, Carla says
Sure.
everything is everything, so,
Everything is
okay,
included.
all right.
Yes,
So we'll,
what it says.
we'll take a look. Yes,
I had another question. Why does it say Amo, Israel Amo? That seems to suggest that he did hear more than just Kriyas Yamsuf.
what does Amo mean, by the way? I'm not sure, I didn't.
His nation,
His
what is
nation.
What, yeah, what, whose nation?
Israel.
Moshe.
Israel, Amo.
And what, whose nation? I hear Harold's answer, I just didn't hear your answer.
Moshe's
Moses.
which is Am Israel.
Not Hashem's
Le
nation?
Moshe
Not-
ule
not-
Israel Amo.
Not
which
Hashem's
means-
nation, but,
What?
okay, not Hashem's nation.
No, Le Moshe.
Moshe.
All right, we'll go with that one. We'll go
This
with
is
that.
what he's
Yeah,
listening
yeah,
to.
Barbara.
But it says Asa Elohim, so it's Yitro was impressed with Hashem did, not necessarily what Moshe did. So
No,
the
Hashem
nation-
did, of course.
So the
He didn't.
nation would be Hashem created this nation, not that Moshe was creating the nation.
No. Oh, could be Amo.
Well, you know, see, we'll get up to, we'll get up to a related question there, but maybe should have just said everything Elohim did for Yisrael.
That's right.
He knows it right now.
Why add Moshe?
That's not the question, I think.
That's his motivation.
Didn't have to
the
add the
Torah.
Moshe.
That is his motivation to come, to bring his wife and his children, to make them
Well,
happy.
okay, I mean, we could, you know, we could say that the fact that the Torah identifies Yisro, who we already know it's Yisro, you know, it says Yisro, and but to say Chotei Moshe, his father-in-law, so we know he's his father. But so if you say his father-in-law, then you could argue that he had the reason that it's there is because there's an aspect of being, you know, part of the mishpacha that's motivating him to come. You know, that
He
could be
brought-
part of
he
it.
brought his
So you don't have to have
family,
two motivations
But he
necessarily.
brought his family,
That's-
that's important.
Okay, good. So.
That notation.
Right, so then we could just say that the father-in-law who wanted to have a family reunion, you know, came because he heard all the things that God did for the Jewish people.
Right.
You don't have to mention Moshe's name again. He's the
Okay,
father.
so what's,
Okay.
So what's wrong?
All right, so just these questions though actually lead to some you know, pretty heavy observations, truthfully. So the Malbim explores the question of Kohen Midjan. Why say Kohen Midjan? Now we may not
That's what it
endorse Yisro's occupation or his religious you know, persuasion for a big piece of his life, but he was a big shot.
Okay.
And he wasn't just one of many. He, at least, you know, the Medrash understands it, that he was, you know, a head person. He was a pretty good guy.
Oh,
And he's Moshe's father-in-law. So the question is, who comes to whom?
What do you mean who comes from?
You know, should things are settled down there, right? Now there's a machlokes, a difference of opinion, if the Aseres Hadibros have already been given or not. So, you know, that might play a role, maybe, but not necessarily, but just for the record, put it up there. You know, some say for sure the Aseres Hadibros didn't happen yet, or else the Medrash should have said that you sort of heard about that too. But there are other references. I won't take the time to go into it. There's an argument, a clear argument to be made. The two major opinions in the Gemara.
They had it this morning.
Okay, good.
What is that?
Okay, I assume there are workers here. I assume it's part of
Yeah, when I came in there.
testing this. Until we hear screams, we can keep on going.
Those kind of things.
So,
But who wrote these words? Are these Hashem's
this is
words?
Hashem's words.
This is God dictating it to Moshe?
Yes, but if
So
Hashem
you
is,
wanna know why God wrote it then?
but if Hashem is talking about Yisro, then we have a right to strongly consider, maybe even really assume, that Hashem is revealing certain aspects of whoever the character would be. You know, when the Chumash says, when the quote unquote the narrator, who's Hashem, you know, says by Yomer Yaakov, so we have a right to think that at least in most cases, unless there's a need to have something that's absolutely objective, that there's going to be the perspective of the person being referred to come across in those words, because it's Hashem. Hashem's going to give us, you know, that perspective, unless he has to sort of counteract what maybe the person is thinking and trying to make it, you know, more objective. I don't know if you, I didn't give details because I don't want to get deep into something else right now, but generally speaking, if a character is identified, you know, by the Torah as doing something or saying something, at least in most cases, it would be fair to say, I'm not saying everybody agrees, but it would be fair to say that the Torah is giving us a perspective from the person himself. And I think this will be important. I want to share with you mostly words of the Malbim today. I think it would be fair to say that the Malbim would take that approach to what's happening. So, but things are quieted down now. You know, our enemies have perished. We have wealth, we have daily food, we have water. You know, so it's a whole different life than it was at the beginning of last week's parasha. So, you know, one could say that Moshe should pick himself up and go back home and tell his family he's alive and well. In Midian, go back to Midian, not to stay there. You don't have to take a suitcase, you know, just an overnight bag maybe. And let everybody know that you're okay and see what the next steps are going to be. And he's fine. It's not just his wife and children who are there, but it's his father-in-law. We're supposed to respect, you know, you respect the father-in-law, you know, in similar ways you respect your own parent. So why? So he should, and he's not just his father-in-law. He's the Kohen Gadol. You know, he is a venerable, respected person. So Moshe should have gone to Yisro.
No, but he belongs in Midian. He has an important job in Midian. Why should he come to Mitzrayim?
Right. I'm just saying, just like Moshe would not have resumed his residence in Midian. He just, the cell service was very poor at that time.
He has a Moshe has a mission.
Okay, so he can't take a day off?
No.
He can't,
off?
a day off to let his family know he's alive and everything's okay?
Why is saying no?
Did he
He
do
was
that during the
very
whole
busy with
time?
the
he was
people
in
of
Mitzrayim?
But that he couldn't, that was, I'm saying, that was a hustle and a bustle going on, and especially, if you wanted to add, statements from the Medrash that you had a major play. When we say in the Haggadah, about Etzva Elokim and how many Makkahs were there really in Egypt, and the numbers get built up, is that their opinions that you had one main Makkah, but to keep the Egyptians busy, there were minor Makkos that were taking place also. But Moshe was busy here. He was giving plagues, he was giving warnings, he was being called back and forth to the palace. Then it would have been very, very hard to leave. But that's why I said things are relaxed now. The enemy is gone, totally gone. And the supplies have been taken care of. We had a hard time. We fetched Hashem. Hashem fixed it up. We have water and we have the man to eat every day. We have peace. There's no battle going on. Moshe could take 2 days off and go back to Midian and then come back to the people.
That's fine.
But
He has Aaron. He has Yehoshua.
I know, but he got his father-in-law took the initiative and came to him.
That's right.
Nothing wrong
He
with that.
Moshe didn't send him an invitation.
No, but he heard of Hashem. That's nothing.
That Moshe heard. But what does that mean, Marilyn?
I look at it as Moses has a bunch of children to take care of, like a mama does. If a mama leaves a good home and goes away for 2 days, it's chaos.
Right.
Meanwhile, Yitro's retired. He can afford to gather his stuff and say, let's go. Plus the fact he didn't have enough rooms for them all.
Okay,
He didn't have enough.
Anyway, yes, Harold.
let's move on.
Doesn't Moshe pretty much just take his orders from Hashem in terms of where he's
Yeah,
going,
good.
where the clouds Lori.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Tim,
to a large
Yes.
degree, but what day was the Torah given on? What day of Sivan was it given?
Vav Sivan.
Of Sivan, but according to some hints in the Torah and according to, opinions, that Moshe added another day. He added even though we celebrate Shavuos on the 6th day of Sivan, that the actual Shavuos actually happened on the 7th day of Sivan because Moshe felt
How
that
did
people
we
weren't
come up with 6?
weren't ready. Yeah.
Does the Torah say the 6th?
So why do we celebrate Vav Sivan? In that day?
We have the,
I know it's the
I think
6th.
we have the
don't
Rosh
know how
Chodesh mentioned, and we had 3 days of, we had preparation. We'd have to take a look at that. But
Yeah.
I'm just saying that you have one or two other cases where Moshe is given a certain mission, but he sometimes modifies it to make it appropriate. He's the leader. He's the boss of Adam. He's the human being. He understands the human beings, and he takes Hashem's word and modifies it in a couple of occasions to make sure that it's going to work for the people. But be it as it may, you should what the Malbim answers to the question is that Yisro wasn't standing on ceremonies, that even in Yisro's mind, he could have thought that maybe it would have been nicer for Moshe to come, but okay. So, he knows he is the head of the people, but he's also heard, he's heard things have calmed down also, but he decides to go. He has really two missions. We mentioned the family mission, but we're going to see he has another mission, which turns out even to be a greater mission. So, but on the other, so one of the answers to that question is that even though you could have made the point that Moshe should have come to Yisro, since he's his father-in-law, that Yisro didn't stand on ceremony. He wanted to reunite the family. It's a good message for people. You think somebody owes you a phone call, so you're going to be strong, and in your mind, we're going to be strong and not call until they call me. And meantime, 6 years go by because someone doesn't want to pick up the phone to call the other person. If it's an important relationship, forget about whose turn it is to call. So that was Yisro's attitude, is that maybe it's right for Moshe to come to me, but things are calm. I want the family to be back together. Why that phrase is added at the end, after it says that Yisro heard everything that Hashem did for Bnei Yisrael, and then it says that Hashem took the Jewish people out of Mitzrayim. So the Malbim says that is that's part of a big statement, and Yisro realizes that's no small feat. Maybe related to what Marilyn was saying, also is that that there's this whole nation that has become independent now. So this is a great task, and not only does it maybe inform Yisro's decision about who's going to go visit whom, but maybe now he understands why Moshe separated from his wife back then. It wasn't that there were family problems per se. It's just that how could Moshe in that situation, that job given to him, how could he really be a family man?
From his father-in-law to leave. He asked his father-in-law.
Right,
He needs to go back to Egypt because Hashem called me to liberate.
Right, but when he goes there, his wife and kids go with him though. That time, then Moshe sends them back. Aaron tells him that you must be a Bissar Meshuggah. We're suffering in Egypt. You want to bring more people in, to suffer. But he left, with his family. Now, there's something that is not in the pasuk. And I won't tell you now, but let's just move ahead. So Yisro arrived, and Yisro arrives, and he gets a very nice greeting. Just to make sure I don't have to let that person in. I don't know. Okay. Okay. I don't know. Sarah, hopefully you're hearing me.
I am.
Okay, good. After after the public welcome of Yisro, what happens? Page 394 at the bottom, verse 7. Vayetze Moshe l'krat chotno. Moshe goes out to welcome his father-in-law. Vayishtachu. He bowed. He kissed him. Vayishaklo. Vayishu. Ishrei l'shalom. Each one asked the other, "How you doing?" Vayavo ha'ohela. And then they went into Moshe's tent. We'll get up to that also momentarily. Then listen carefully. Vayisaper Moshe lechotno et kol asher asa Hashem leFarao u'lemitzrayim. That Moshe told his father-in-law everything that Hashem did to Paro and the Egyptians. Al odot Yisrael, relating to the Jewish people. Et kol hatla'ah Hashem mitzatam b'derech, all the travail that found them on their path. Vayatzilem Hashem, and Hashem rescued them. What's the, there's a change of focus here. What's the change of focus?
You mean coming up? Or
What did-
you just read?
No, what I just read.
Instead of Vaishma Yitro, it's Vaisaper Moshe.
Okay, good. What else?
Instead of,
Tova?
Content itself, instead of the miracles and whatever, we are going to whatever not so happy things that happen to him. What happened? Complaints and the this and the that. Yitro comes because of all the miraculous, beautiful things that happen. And Moshe tells him, listen there, I got problems.
Okay, we'll take the observation, but maybe with a little different twist. Harold.
the first pasuk refers to what happened to Moshe and Israel. Here, Moshe is telling over what happened to Pharaoh and Mitzrayim.
Right. So, Carla.
I want to say that he figured out what he needs help with, and his father-in-law told him, I mean, why are so many people standing behind you?
But that's going to come up the next day.
We didn't get there yet.
Yeah. So this is already
Tomorrow
before.
they are meeting?
This is before that. This is that Moshe's they had a little chit chat, and then they go into the tent, and in the tent Moshe starts some serious business. So while the Pasha started out that Yisro heard all the things that Hashem did for Moshe and the Jewish people, but Moshe tells his father-in-law what Hashem did to the Mitzrayim, to the Egyptians, and to Paro.
And Alodot Yisrael.
Okay, right, but he adds. Yisro made no reference to that, and Moshe has to add it. And he does that, and with the Odot Yisrael about the Jews, that's like a little bit that's another aspect, but more or less we'll deal with them, I don't know, together or one after the other. So the way the Malbim understands it is that I think we're aware of this, that there were many religions in the world that could not fathom that the chief divine being in the world would be anything but good, and that anything that would happen in the world that could be considered bad, at least in objective terms, and often not necessarily objective terms, usually not, because that could be totally objective, comes from a different power.
Right.
That's where the devil comes, the concept of the devil. What's the devil in non-Jewish thinking? The devil is in charge of bad things. Hashem doesn't do bad things, and in those. This is what Moshe is starting to teach Yisro. Yisro didn't bring in the punishment, because Yisro is talking, about the good things that Hashem does, and the Makos and would have been part of something that the God would have. I don't know. I'm not an expert in all the religions, but maybe it would be either relegated or gave power over to to another being. That, we have a concept of Satan in Judaism, but a Satan is a malach. A Satan is an angel. And the job of that angel is that if somebody really does something bad, so the angel is the prosecuting attorney that can bring it before Hashem, and then Hashem has to evaluate the case. But Hashem is the boss. Hashem has all powers. But in other religions, there's a God for good, and there's a God for bad. Or there's an angel or a different force or a devil that's in charge of the bad. And Moshe starts out by saying, I want to tell you, my dear father-in-law, that the truth, when it comes to this people and our relation with Hashem, that what we know is that everything comes from Hashem. Whatever the action, is, it all comes from Hashem. You come in and you just want to talk about all the good stuff that happened, but I want to teach you something. So that this right now, what we're really seeing here is the religious philosophical evolution of Yisro with Moshe's help. That he comes as a Kohen Midyan, but he doesn't leave necessarily as a Kohen Midyan. By many opinions, he converts, while he's here, which would be understood momentarily in the Chumash without making a direct reference. Some questions? No? Okay.
He went back to his place and he did not convert to Judaism. He went back to his place and continued to be in that place.
It's not clear exactly what Yisro did, but just because Yisro went back, and we don't know if he went back and stayed there or if he went back and rejoined Bnei Yisrael. Big machlokes, but Yisro's descendants were in Israel. In fact, it was in last week's Haftorah, where Yisro's descendants, very good relationships, understandable with the Jewish people. But a topic for another time in terms of where Yisro actually wound up. But one of the explanations when Yisro tells Moshe later on in Pashas Bahaloscha and Sefer Bamidbar that ki im el atzi umolati elech, he's going to go back to his land, his birthplace. He's going to go back to convert people, and then he's going to return. So we don't know exactly what happened, but I'm just saying there is an opinion that he did convert, and according to one opinion, when we're going to be told, momentarily in the Chumash that Yisro brought korbanos, so some understand that the korbanos that was korban as part of a conversion process. So that's it.
That was his korban.
I'm just telling you what Chazal say. There's an opinion in Chazal that had to do with his conversion process. It was conversion, it was bris milah, but that's like Moshe's first, major lesson to Yisro, who wants to learn more from Moshe, was that the source all comes from the same source. Now, what's good and what's bad, that's Moshe, according to the Malvin, Moshe gets into that type of topic as well. On the one hand, the Egyptians clearly did things that were punishable, that they violated ethical, moral guidelines and how they treated the Jewish people, and at the same time, Hashem has this. Hashem is all powerful, so he can make everything fit. But at the same time, the punishments of the Egyptians also helped in the liberation and the formation of the Jewish people, their understanding of Hashem's power. So it's like it's a complex formula that's taking place. In that opening pasuk, we have another question. I'm going to read the pasuk again, mostly in English, but I'm going to specifically use two words in Hebrew. Yisro, the priest of Midian, the father-in-law of Moshe, heard everything which Elohim did to Moshe and to Israel, his nation, that Hashem took out Israel from Mitzrayim.
So what's the question?
That's my question. What's my question?
No, what's the question?
What's the question? It happened.
Why does he use Elokim?
Right. The first time it says that Yisro heard everything that Elohim did to Moshe and to Israel, and then it says Hashem.
Different.
So so that's a significant change. By the way, when Moshe talks to Yisro in Pasuk Chet 8, what does Moshe say? He says only Hashem. In fact, Hashem appears twice in the pasuk. So according to the Malvim, Yisro's also to Yisro's religious philosophy was that he understood that there were a lot of different powers in the world, a lot of divine powers. Like we know, like the Egyptians, like the Nile was a power, the sun is a power, stars are a power. So one of the things that was also part of Yisro's philosophy, not necessarily unique, but that Yisro did, his opinion was that there was one overall mighty divine being, but that he empowered all these other forces to really do the work. He sat back in the executive suite, and he hired a lot of different managers, and the managers really, when it comes to down to earth, the managers are taking care of what needs to be taken care of. God is not really on the scene. So the overall God is Hashem. Elohim, which is in the plural, would refer to what people. I mean, we also use it to refer to Hashem, but sometimes it's referring to in the Aseret Dibros, which is part of this week's parsha. He says you're not allowed to have Elohim Acherim. If we're talking about that, we don't have to worry. We don't want to say Elohim because that's not true. We say Elohim because they're not real gods. It's what people thought they were gods. Yeah, listen, the sun has a lot of energy to it, yes, but it's not a god. So so Yisro, he acknowledged all what Elohim did for Moshe and Yisrael. So he thought there was one God who took care of the Nile River. There was another God who took care of the drowning of the Egyptians. There was a God for this. There was a God for that. And that's when Yisro hears all the things. It's all these different kind of gods, was helping. But overall, Yisro acknowledges that they had to be all coordinated to get the goal of getting the Jews out of Mitzrayim. So then he brings in Hashem. And Moshe talks to Yisro and says, my dear father-in-law, it's only Hashem.
Also, we say that Elohim is Midat HaRachamim and Hashem is Midat HaDin. So
the other way around.
The other way around?
Yeah. Elo Yud Hey Vav Hey is Nikeva. So Nikeva, the woman, the female, is the more compassionate.
Why is it Nikeva?
It ends in a hey. Normally, most words that end in a hey.
Only when it's kamatz and a hey.
I'm saying most words end in a hey. But the Elo Hashem, the Yud Gimel Midos, Hashem, Kel Rachum V'Chanun. That is Hashem. It's not Elohim. This is a different viewpoint of it. It's not looking at. It's not looking at this as from a Jewish. It's a Jewish perspective of being applied to non-Jewish people, to the people of the world. That there were some people in the world that even though, and Yisro was one of them, that even though they believed in multiple gods, but they also believed in a high power God that was over all the others. And this is what was part of Yisro's religious belief. And Moshe in this passage, that's the first thing that Moshe tells Yisro. The first thing recorded from the conversation is that Moshe wants to set it straight that what happened to Paro and the Mitzrayim, that also comes from Hashem. They're not two, there aren't 2 or 22 or 122, etc. gods. There's one God, and it includes everything. What else Moshe says is that when the Torah tells us about Yisro's coming, it says that Yisro heard everything that Hashem did to Moshe and Bnei Yisrael. What does Moshe say to Yisro? about the happenings to Israel. He doesn't put himself in.
That's fine.
He's not that this didn't happen because of him. I mean, he obviously had a role to play, but don't give me all the credit. This is the Rabbanu Shalom. This is Hashem.
Reading further, so when it's maybe you mentioned when it says Vayikach Yitro Choten Moshe Olos Vachim Lelohim, you're saying so this is to the other gods.
No, here this is
Is that what
already
you just
here.
said?
Now he's under Moshe's tutelage, and now he's gotten the message from Moshe. So
When
now
you said that the word Elohim is
Yeah,
used
so
to
by that you
represent-
say
in the first
I
pasuk,
mean, then it means that, and now
right?
it means
Sometimes that in
why
the
didn't it
Chumash,
say
sometimes
Hashem?
in
Then
the
why didn't it say Hashem?
That
here?
is a good question. Yes. It's a good question.
That's a good
Follow
question.
your
That's a good
reasoning.
right, that's a good
Yeah.
question. Let's just take a look. 1 second.
Why doesn't it say Hashem? Elohim are many times.
It could be. Listen, it's possible. Maybe the Malbim would agree with this. Maybe he wouldn't. But I shouldn't say the Malbim. Those who hold that this is the conversion process might have a little bit more. It might be a little bit more delicate. But Elohim, when we speak, within Jewish terms, I think I would say in my mind, at least right now, the two most popular distinctions between Hashem and Elohim is one, as Ada mentioned, is the Rachamim versus the Din, being more compassionate versus being more strict to the law, and that Hashem is a particular name for Hashem's relationship with us, and Elohim, Breshit bara Elohim at Shemayim at the Aretz. So Elohim is a universal term. So it's a lot of different usages we have in the Torah. In the Torah, Elohim, lo tikala Elohim is. I think there, if I remember correctly, that use of Elohim is referring to judges in Israel.
Right.
But we have Elohim means judges too. So it's a lot of different words, a lot of different meanings for the same word. So it becomes a little bit tricky. So it could be, one could say that Yisro didn't convert yet, and that not even and the Korban is not even part of his conversion. So he's had his mind set straight, but he's not a Jew yet. So he refers to Elohim from a non-Jewish perspective. Maybe doesn't say it here. In the Medrash, I know. So where is what's let's take a look if Rashi brings it down. Yeah, it's not in Rashi, but other Meforshim bring it down that it was part of his conversion process, which could also be understood. He starts out that he's by Yikach, he takes it. He's a guy still, but part of when he already offers it, so that's part of becoming a Jew. So good question. And could be multiple answers. We've explored one or maybe two. Yes, Barbara.
Well, maybe he is using the same term, but it means something different to him now.
Yeah, that could be also. Yeah, valid. So after he has his conversation with Moshe, or at least the first, just after the conversation, at this point, junction in the conversation, pasuk 9, Tet, Vayichad Yitro Akol HaTova, Yitro rejoiced over all the good, Asher Asa Hashem LiYisrael, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, Asher Hitzilo Miyam Mitzrayim, and who rescued him. That's the word Hatzalah, the ambulance called Hatzalah. So that's where it comes from. It's this word Hitzilo that rescued the nation from the hands of the Egyptians. Vayome Yitro, Baruch Hashem, Asher Hitzil Etchem Miyad Mitzrayim Umiyad Paro. Blessed is Hashem who saved you from the hand of Mitzrayim and the hand of Pharaoh. asher hitzil et ha'am mitachad yam Mitzrayim, and who delivered, saved the nation from under the hand of Mitzrayim.
This is just repeating the same thing.
Sounds a little bit, okay.
It's
Put,
repeating the same.
make a note, put it down for next year. We should take a look at that maybe.
It's repeating the same words. It said miyad Mitzrayim or mitachat yad Mitzrayim. It's the same thing.
So maybe not.
Yes.
So I'm like, okay, so here, if we were to look back at the beginning of the slavery story, and if we looked at the psukim, one pasuk in particular, very carefully, we would see that the Jews were officially slaves to Pharaoh. They were Pharaoh's slaves, they were kingdom slaves. But it appears that that Pharaoh gave permission to the Egyptians to hop a slave on their way home from work. So at the end of their work day, someone could tell the Jew, my floors need sweeping, my windows need to be cleaned, so that the normal Egyptians actually were given access to, for a little bit of the day, they could use the Jews after the Jews did a hard day's of
Why are you
labor.
mentioning that? What is that?
So it's possible that in one of the times that Mitzrayim is used in this pasuk, that could be speaking about the general people, because it says, "Asher hitzilchem miyad Mitzrayim u'miyad Paro," from the hands of the Egyptians and the Pharaoh. And then when it says mitachad yad Mitzrayim, for being underneath, we weren't really underneath the hands of the citizens of Egypt, because they had a certain right to us, but it was Paro whose hand was on us. We were Pharaoh's slaves. So once we add the word mitachat yad Mitzrayim, that can turn the word. It's a tricky thing. It's good that you brought it up, but that can turn it back to being under the Egyptian empire.
We shouldn't use the word slaves. We should call them servants.
Well, what's the difference? These were really slaves.
I'll tell you the
Yeah.
difference. Because everybody uses, they weren't slaves like the blacks were the slaves in the South. That's what people think of when we say slaves.
I think
They had their,
in what way was it different than?
I'll tell you in every single word. They lived in their own homes, the Hebrews. They had their wives. They had their children. And the only thing, this we know from other studies, it was what Pharaoh had for them is that they worked for him.
Hard labor.
Hard labor may have been 1 month a year. 1 month a year. The Shlomo HaMelech did the same.
No, we don't know that. That's
He
right.
did.
They do it the other year.
You have to bring me your assignment for next week.
Where did you get
Actually, is to
1
bring me a
month a year?
source for that.
They worked. That's
but-
why,
Well,
because it doesn't, it calls them Sarah Misim. This is the mass that they had. We find the same term.
We'll see.
used.
I think something that the Mappin will say will
Shlomo
be
HaMelech
a
did the same
contribution
thing.
to it.
where
We
did you
can't.
get
Shlomo
the
HaMelech is a
1
different
month a
thing.
year?
Shlomo
They
HaMelech
did
did
6 months a year.
Shlomo HaMelech did a draft of the people. You cannot compare it to Shlomo HaMelech at all. That's not a fair
That's
comparison
what
whatsoever.
Pharaoh had.
This was
know,
a
that's what
belittling
Pharaoh
of people, an extreme harshness of people, beating of people, the drowning of children. This was not a Shlomo HaMelech tax on people that you have to work.
Why not?
I just told you why not.
Why does
Okay,
the Torah-
I want to. We have to
the Torah
end soon. I
calls
want to move on.
Sarah
Just
Misim.
I just want to move along further. You're welcome, privately, to bring me some other sources besides just the reference of me singing. So, yeah. So I want. So the words that Yisro uses here of in the next pasuk is Ataya Dati, verse 11. Now I know Ki Gadol Hashem Mikol Ha'Elohim. I know that God is the greatest. Ki Vadava Asher Zadu Alehem, because of the way that Hashem punish midah keneged midah. You know, like the Egyptians drowned the male babies in the Nile, and now Hashem's drowning the Egyptian army in water. So Yisro paid attention to things that seemed to, things that related to the crime. He was impressed by that. So he's used the word Baruch in the previous pasuk for Hashem, and he's used the word Gadol. So the Malbim also pays particular note to those usages of the words, and our next Rosh Chodesh, we could pay more attention to the opening paragraph of the Hallel, because in that opening paragraph, it starts, Halu Abdei Hashem, Halu et Shem Hashem. Then it says, Yehi Shem Hashem Mevorach Me'atav Yad Olam. Hashem's name should be blessed, from now and forever. Mimizrach Shemesh Ad Mivo'o, from the rising of the sun until its setting, Muhulal Shem Hashem. So Hashem is praised. This is Ram al Kol Goyim Hashem. For the non-Jewish nations, Hashem is above, elevated, very elevated. Al Hashemayim Kabodo.
So what does that connect?
So
why are you bringing it up?
Just 1 second. So the Malbim understands the. I'm going to read you the Malbim for a second. It says, Shahumot ha'olam. So even to those non-Jews who would acknowledge that there is one big, deity that's over all the others, from that background that Yisro originally came from, that the non-Jewish nation said, Mimizrach Shemesh Ad Mivo'o Mihulal Shem Hashem. And this Hashem is that overall God, right? So he's praised, but he's not but he's not blessed. That blessed has a connotation, Hashem giving blessings, that he's flowing with goodness, and that he delivers that goodness, and that he's a mashpia, an influencer, and he's present in our lives. Again, this is going back to a more, the Jews see Hashem as part of us in our daily lives, whereas in non-Jewish worlds, if they want to acknowledge a God, they still see God as Hashem as being removed from our daily lives. And this was a message that undoubtedly Moshe tried to teach to Yisro also, and Yisro gets up and uses this language. It's, like Aristotle, he was more extreme, maybe we could say, he didn't view God the same way that Yisro did, only in part. Aristotle believed that there was a God who created the world, but then he left to do something else. He's not involved in the world. So Yisro came from a background, before he changed his religious beliefs, he came from a background that he recognized that there was God, but God set certain things in motion, like Aristotle would say, but he then empowered other forces to take over, and he was very distant from the world. We don't believe that God is distant from the world. I mean, it's a hard thing to put together, but based upon what levels we're able to achieve, some will understand Hashem a little bit more, some a little, somewhat less. None of us will ever be able to achieve a full understanding of Hashem, but Hashem is in this world. Hashem wants to be in this world with us. So those were some of the lessons that Moshe taught Yisro. So these beginning verses of the Parsha really speaks very heavily to not only to the goodness of Hashem, but also to the evolution of Yisro into a different religious type of being.
Thank you.
Have a good day. If you registered for the lunch and learn, remember it starts soon.
That's where we're going.
That's what-